PowerPoint? Does that sound good?
Great idea.
Sure, I think.
It's December 4th, 2020, 9:02, calling the Bike and Walkway meeting to order. And sorry, I'm going to be flipping. I wasn't able to print out our agenda to have it handy. So I'm going to flip back on the screen. So the first thing that we have on our agenda is just to review the committee's official charge. So I'm just going to read that out loud now. In accordance with the Wellfleet Town Charter, the Board of Selectmen hereby establishes the Bike and Walkways Committee as an ad hoc committee with the following charge. The Bike and Walkway Committee is hereby established to consider ways to provide safe areas for biking and walking. The Board of Selectmen believes that these activities should be available seasonally and year-round, as they are an important means of local transportation, are popular activities in the town, and promote good health. The Bike and Walkway Committee is charged with the following tasks. 1, to work with the Cape Cod National Seashore, the towns of Provincetown and Truro, and the Cape Cod Commission to establish the continuation of the bike trail northward into Provincetown. 2, to prepare a plan for future bike and walking routes throughout the town of Wellfleet. The Wellfleet Bike and Walkway Committee shall be composed of 5 members. The members will be appointed by the Board of Selectmen. To establish an overlapping appointment period, the following appointments will be made initially: 2 for 3 years, 2 for 2 years, 1 for 1 year. After the expiration of the initial terms, all terms will be for 3 years. And next on our agenda is committee organization. And first step is electing committee officers. So as we all know, we have, what happened to everybody? Sorry.
Well, we're here.
Oh, I just don't see anybody anymore for some reason.
If you click the little video camera on the bottom bar of your computer, we should pop back.
Oh, thank you.
And you know, if you wanted, you can screen share the agenda. If that, I can even.
Yes. Could you do that? That would be very helpful. Oh, here's Ned. Let's see. He's ready and signed in, but I don't see him. Sorry. Yeah, if you could screen share the agenda, that'd be great. Let me see if I can help Ned get on. Does he need to be let in by somebody?
To be, but let's see. I'll look.
He's not showing up in the waiting room yet.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. I'm gonna just resend him the link.
Could invite him if it would help him to have a fresh link, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's doing this from his phone or. I'll just send him all this really quickly. While we're waiting.
Now,
so,
when I
go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I'm screen sharing the agenda, but I'm typing the minutes. So are you guys still seeing the agenda or are you seeing my minutes?
I just see the agenda.
Yep.
Great. Cool.
So we have 2 new members, Pete. And so we're going to go ahead and do our committee organization.
Can we get Ned on board to do that?
I'm sorry?
Can we get Ned on board?
Yeah, it's just waiting. That's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah.
He hasn't replied yet, so he's probably
Okay.
fine. Sorry. We're all new to this Zoom.
Yeah, don't apologize. This is awesome that we're all.
There he is. Yeah.
Great.
Here we go.
Oh, great.
Good
Ned,
morning, Ned.
hello.
Ah, there you are.
Hi,
Excellent.
Ned, you appear to be muted.
I don't
There we-
see Ned.
There we go.
Oh, you got me now?
There you are.
Yep.
All right, good. Sorry, we got zoomed in on the wrong meeting on the last meeting but anyway, we're here.
Great, awesome. So all I've done so far is I called the meeting to order and I read our official charge, which you are already familiar with.
Right.
We have the agenda. Can you see the agenda on your screen as well?
I can,
Perfect.
yeah.
So we have 2 new members. So we're going to start out with our committee organization and elect committee officers.
Rebecca, could I interrupt? How do
Yes.
I see Ned? I don't,
So
If you do participants on the bottom, and then you can scroll down. I think that's one way to do it.
yeah. The other is the videos should be on the right-hand side. Do you have a list of the faces? Some of the pictures?
right, I don't have a picture of Ned. That's,
So if you scroll down, if you see what are there 4 small squares on that you're seeing 4 people?
yes.
There's a little tiny arrow at the bottom, and if you
It
click
shows
that,
what-
then it'll
Oh,
scroll you to.
okay.
And maybe I could also shrink our screen. I wonder.
I can't get the bottom arrow.
The other way to do it, Ned, is,
Oh.
excuse me, Lance, is if you put your cursor at the top of the screen where the pictures are, there should be a little matrix, a 3x3 checkerboard matrix
Yes,
as one of the icons. If you click on that, it will change the view. So you'll see
gotcha,
6 pictures.
gotcha. Thank you.
Participants.
Hi, Ned.
Hey, Lance, how you doing?
Good.
All right, so I think, does anyone have a nomination for chair, role of the chair?
Yeah, I
Hi.
nominate Peter.
I second it.
Great, so we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Hi.
Aye. Vote carries.
I didn't
unanimous.
get to nominate Rebecca. Oh, well.
All right, and next up is vice chair.
I nominate Rebecca.
I
I
second.
second.
Now,
Favor?
well, one discussion item. Rebecca, I know looking at the website, that your term of membership expires June 30th of
Okay,
next
yeah.
year.
Mhm.
So we would just so that we're all on the same page. I mean, that would, so I would move that your initial term here or renewal of your term is until June 30th of next year. And then we would have to revisit it at that point,
Yes, that's correct.
just to be administratively correct. Okay.
Yes. I think we're on the vote part. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
And I'll accept. And then the role of minute taker clerk. I nominate Chris.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Vote carries unanimously, and I think that's all the positions, correct? Is that all
I
the?
think so. I
Yeah.
believe so.
All right. Well, then we now have Peter Cook as our chair, so I'll hand over the baton to you to continue.
Thank you. I'm going to
the
take a
meeting.
sip of coffee and we'll get going here. Okay. So, well,
I know,
thank you very
it's
much.
impressive.
Yeah. We have done, third item there is committee organization on our agenda. We've just had the election of committee officers. So the next item is considering committee objectives. I would propose that we don't define those objectives this morning, but that what we do is we introduce this as an action that we need to take. And that is to consider what our committee objectives should be, and that we deliberate on those until amongst, discuss them amongst ourselves, not, in keeping with open meeting laws, but that we put some ideas together before the next meeting, and then we deliberate on those ideas at the next meeting. And that what we do is, because we have a lot of immediate issues in the town regarding bikeways and routes in particular, that we set our objectives to be short-term ones, so that we can make sure they're actionable in the near term, and that we try to focus on objectives for the next 6 months. So
Sounds good.
does that sound like a good approach?
Yes.
I will defer to the past members of the committee. Do we need to take an action, to set an action for the committee? Do we need to have a vote or a motion? Or do we just?
I'm not sure.
Haven't.
What's that?
In something like this, we did just set plans in the past without voting. I don't know.
Okay. How about if we make it something that sounds actionable, that we designate 1 or 2 people to be a collection point for ideas, for objectives, so that as people are thinking in the period before the next meeting, they can be gathering those ideas, so there can be kind of a deconfliction of ideas and putting them together in a way that we can, and then to present those ideas at the next meeting.
I think that's a good idea. In view of the importance of it, maybe the chair and vice chair could be that gathering group.
That sounds fine to me. Rebecca, do you, is that good? Okay, just for formality's sake, then I move that we, as a committee, take an action in the intervening period here before our next meeting to develop ideas for near-term objectives, and that's out for the next 6 months, so that we'll have something, basically a statement of our objectives formulated, and that Rebecca and I will be the collectors of those ideas, and then the presenters at the next meeting, so that we can consider those ideas, develop them further, and then vote to approve ideas that have been accepted. So I move that Rebecca and I take the action and we present at the next meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Meeting schedule is the next item. So interested in people's ideas. Mine is that, well, let me ask first the past committee members, how often was the committee under normal circumstances, about how often was the committee meeting?
Once a month, maybe, a little, sometimes more.
Okay. So I would, based on that, I propose, and given the issues we have, I'd say, can we, for a period of 3 months, meet on a bi-weekly basis, so once every 2 weeks, to get some organization completed, and also so that we're able to take some of the early tactical actions that we need to take to lay groundwork for dealing with, external agencies, so that we can be reporting in a proper way to the select board, et cetera. So I would, that would be my recommendation to the committee, is that for at least the next 3 months, we meet on a every 2 week basis.
Sounds
Any thoughts?
okay. I'm just pulling up my calendar. I do think that sounds fine. Let's see. So that would leave us meeting on the 18th.
Okay. 18th of December.
Mhm.
Perhaps we would skip the holiday period, depending on what day that is. What is that, like January?
And the next 2-week phase is January 1st. So that would be a good one to skip.
That's a good one to skip. Okay, so that the next meeting would be the 18th, and then we would skip the 1st, and I would recommend then we go with the meeting on the 8th. And could we continue on a every 2-week basis through until March 26th?
We can certainly try. Sounds good.
If we set that as kind of our target, and then depending on circumstances, obviously, everyone's got caught in a blizzard and there's a power outage and nobody can get online, then we would skip. But, okay, well, I move that we take that as our initial game plan for the meetings, and then we revisit it in March to look at going to something that's more spaced out to a month, say a month or two.
Sounds good. And if we are ahead of schedule,
Second.
we can decrease it.
Yeah. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, sounds unanimous. All right. The next item is establishing rules to invite public comment in the meetings, because clearly some of the issues that we're dealing with are ones in which the public has great interest, and our select board, and there will be people who want to give us information and express opinions. I think it's important that we be open and transparent, and that we establish ahead of time a framework so that we can take those inputs, and so that people will know that there's an opportunity to present ideas to us, in particular in our meetings. So thoughts? Everybody pretty much in agreement?
I think that there can be really helpful feedback, but it has been it's been either A, super helpful, or B, it can be intrusive and demotivating. So anyway, I think being flexible but setting it in a way that doesn't interrupt our productivity makes a lot of sense.
With that in mind, what if we do this? What if we set per agenda item where we invite comments, but we do it at the end of the committee's working discussion of those items? So it would be the last item before we take a vote, or however we're dealing with a particular item on the agenda. And we limit the time per comment, so that we want to hear what people have to say, but that way we don't receive a 10-minute speech. And we'd be limiting the time interval during which they speak in our meeting, but we would not be limiting their input, because we do have the committee email address, and it's a small town. They can provide additional input to us by email after the meeting, but I would say that setting a maximum period for a comment during the meeting would be appropriate, just so the meeting can keep moving and they can make their point to us, and that we allow those comments at the end of the meeting, or at the end of each agenda item. Are there thoughts on how long a period like that should be for any given speaker?
I wish we could have a proportional time. So if the discussion is 5, the comment is 1, But
Interesting.
I just wanted to say I love that idea. I think that it's really important that each item is open and that we remain open, so. But
Let me
it's
toss out
important.
two ideas. I'm sorry, Neb, were you going to say something?
Well, it's just that some people are really passionate about, some of these issues, and they're going to want to speak. I don't know how much we're going to be able to limit them, but I like the idea of how you presented it, but it's going to be a slippery slope, I think, to establish it. But I think it's worthwhile establishing a criteria that hopefully we can limit it somewhat, to because some people just are over the top. They start taking over the meetings, when they get their chance.
So here are two ideas. One would be that we limit people to a half a minute, which is arguably enough time to present a concern or an input to the committee in a concise way. And the other idea would be to say that limit is 1 minute. So either a half a minute or a minute per speaker to voice and input during the meeting, so that we can keep things moving.
I mean, I think you're gonna have to say at least a minute, and be lucky if you can limit it to that. But it's nice to have something there. They probably won't hold it to a minute, but at least if we have something that gives them the idea where you don't have 15 minutes to go on and rant on here. So yeah, I think that's a good criteria to set.
If we kept it short, but then we let there be something at the very end of the agenda, so people understood, okay, yes, I have 30 seconds, but if there's more, it will be at the end of the meeting, so we can still accomplish and achieve our meeting. I love the idea of asking people to be concise, but maybe a minute sounds more humane.
Yeah, I think.
What do you do with someone who doesn't acknowledge the time limit? Do you cut off his mic or her mic, or what do you do? What should we do
Have
as,
them drawn and quartered.
That's a good
That's
question. I think.
a national question.
Well, the first thing we could do is to simply ask them to abide by the rules, or make sure they're aware of the rule before they begin speaking, and count on civility in a small town meeting here as our first line of defense. And then if that doesn't work, we could take a measure like muting the mic, but that's I would do that as a last resort rather than a first resort.
Yeah, I mean, I think once you get to about that minute, a little over a minute point, you start gently saying, hey, we have a minute limit here, and you've kind of gone over that, and can you come to a conclusion at this point?
Yeah.
I think you can, again, it's like you said, disability, I think it can be worked out. I think the important thing is to establish the guidelines so that they know once they start, okay, you're only supposed to have a minute here, and if they start going on beyond that minute, we can just gently prod them and say, hey, time is up,
Any other discussion on the topic?
I think it's really important, as Christy said, at the end, to have a time for them, for people who didn't get it in, to speak further on it.
Mm-hmm.
So we can always point them to the end of the
right.
agenda.
Yes.
Actually, I just realized too, I'm just thinking ahead, since as Ned was saying, we're establishing guidelines. Should we say a 1 minute limit per person with an overall 5-minute limit, so that, say we are at some meeting, by some odd chance we have 10 commenters, that we don't get bogged down too much. Do you guys want to set a max time as well? So that then any comment for a big discussion does happen at the end of the meeting?
I think that's a good idea. And I think, reminding people that they can still share any input and feedback through the email, which can be as long as they like. But we only have an hour for our meetings really. So also then we can really look and think of questions if we have questions, and next meeting and tell them to attend the next meeting, and that we'll dive deeper into whatever feedback or ideas they have.
So Christy, so that I understand better, you're saying in addition to saying a 1 minute limit per speaker, have a maximum of 5 minutes?
Or even 3. What I was thinking is just trying to protect the productivity of the meeting, to say we have time for 3 speakers. If it's a point that's brings so much feedback, then that feedback can be saved for the end of the meeting. So it would just kind of make sure that we can accomplish what we need to accomplish, you know? So we could say 1 minute limit with a total of 3 speakers, and then we'll have an open moment at the end of the meeting and welcome feedback through email.
I agree with your point, and that is that we don't want to necessarily have a series of 25 people who all take a minute to make a comment. I would suggest that maybe what we could do is, if we start, say, with a 1 minute limit, and if we ever, perhaps those occasions will be rare where we have 25 people lined up, or 10, or even 6, you know.
I think so.
But that this is a great idea, and that we hold it in reserve in case we need it. But rather than, we could either lay it out now as a ground rule for future meetings, or we could hold that point in reserve and apply it if the circumstances ever dictate, if the need arises. My only thought there is that if we put a maximum limit on public input of 5 minutes per meeting, as an example, that it whereas limiting somebody's comments to 1 minute is still encouraging their input, but basically requiring them to be concise. If we put a limit on how many inputs we will accept, that would come across to some people as we're limiting the amount of public input. Yeah. So my thought is that we could limit the amount of time per input, but at least for now, not limit the number of inputs.
I don't think I've ever seen more than 5 or 6 people, public people at a meeting anyway. So I think we'd be in pretty good shape with what you're saying, just to, you know, limit it to 1 minute per person. And I don't think we'd have to worry too much about it overall. I mean, I think it'd be pretty rare that you'll have more than 5 people at a meeting.
Let me throw something else in that could be very reasonable over the next short term. Somebody comes to the meeting and says, I have an alternative route. I want to tell you about it. I can't do it in 1 minute, 2 minutes, but it's a reasonable route. I've seen what you propose. I want to show you that. Mm-hmm. I think that's a very reasonable input. I think with the passion that's involved on this issue, we could expect that. So we ought to probably think ahead of how we would handle that. It may be a special meeting or something, but we ought to have some proviso for somebody who comes in with a serious proposal. Probably should be vetted ahead of time by one of the committee's members, and then it's put on the agenda at that time. So it's not in that gray area. Somebody raise their hand and says, I have a 7 minute or a 10 minute proposal. Why are you cutting me off?
Well, that raises a good point. I think that if somebody does have an input in terms of wanting to present something to the meeting, then that would be, say, an agenda item at the next meeting. So it would be open and receptive to those kinds of inputs.
That's one way.
Yeah, the minute limit would not be for proposals to the committee, but it would be, you know, which would be then scheduled on an agenda, but rather for public comment during each of the agenda items that's already that our meeting is considering. So is there a motion?
I move that go ahead.
I was going to say, I can read what I wrote, and that way it could be, so you guys could see if you agree with what I wrote. So 1 minute limit for public comment per person. Establish guidelines and expect civility. Welcome more feedback at the end of the meeting through email and proposals to the committee that can become agenda items. Does that sound like what everyone wants?
Sounds good to me. I'll
Well,
second.
what are we gonna say too, that if there was a little spillover, we could still have them speak at the end?
Yeah.
If we could include
Welcome
something
more
under that.
feedback at the end of the meeting, I wrote.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, although I think
All right.
what I would just amend at the end of the meeting to after the meeting, because if they're providing input to us by email, I don't think the intention is, correct me if somebody's got a different idea, but the intention wouldn't be that they have a 1 minute comment period during an agenda item, and then at the end of the meeting will then extend to receive other comments at the end of the meeting. We want to move through the agenda, adjourn the meeting, and then if there is input that people can't make concisely, if they need to provide more detail or more passion, they're welcome to do that by email, or to get on our agenda for another meeting. Whether it's a working meeting that's held in between others, or if it's the next scheduled meeting.
So then we would just say, welcome more feedback through email and by proposals to the committee that can become agenda items.
Yeah,
Sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah.
it does.
Okay, so should we take that as a motion then, Christy, what you said?
Yeah.
I'll
Okay,
second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Looks like 5 in favor. Okay, on to item 4 on the agenda, which is a post-COVID bicycle safety event, similar to the community event in 2019. That event seemed to be pretty popular in town. I believe, Christy, you were involved in that, and Rebecca?
Awesome. And it was a collaboration with Town Rec, the school, and the police. So it was awesome.
Yeah, it really was.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I would think that something we could do at this point is, because we don't know when the lockdown restrictions from COVID are going to end. But what we can do is take this period to begin fleshing out a plan and to begin engaging some of the outside partners on this event to get their inputs, get their ideas, and they know that we get on their radar screen, basically, that they know that we're thinking of doing this. I mean, personally, I think it might be a great community event as we're coming out of lockdown. It's something that gets people together, especially the kids and others. It might be very welcome to have something where people can get together like this. So, Christy and Rebecca, would you be willing to take an action to take a look at the plans from the last event as a starting point and kind of build a framework or an outline of what an event would look like post-COVID? Determine who the outside points of contact should be to, fire department, police, et cetera. And then give us an outline of an event proposal at the next meeting.
I can.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, it wouldn't
really.
What?
I was going to say, it was a really straightforward event. We have such support. All of those different departments are so supportive. So I'd be happy to just lay out a plan. Should I talk to the different people? Would you like me to do that too?
I would think that would be important, just again, to get it on their radar screen so that the fire and police, as examples, know that we're thinking about it. They're
Okay.
aware of it. And I would say at this point, because we still have unknowns regarding COVID, it doesn't need to be too detailed a plan, but kind of a framework so that we know kind of answers the basic who, what, when, where, why, how questions, for the event. So we kind of know what it's going to look like and who's involved, things like that. So, okay.
No
Well,
problem.
I move that that comes together. Christy, how would you you articulated the last one so well. How would you word this a motion?
Christy will look at past plans and create a framework for moving forward. And I could even say a future event if you want.
Yeah. I mean, for a future, what would you call this? A bike safety event, or is that the correct terminology?
I sometimes call them a bike.
What did I? Bike rodeo.
Is that what it was called last time?
I think so. I'll have to look at my stuff. Did we call it that?
I don't remember.
Well, we could ask the kids. who
fine,
made the
yeah.
poster.
Okay. Yeah.
But, yeah.
No, go ahead.
I think that'd be great. So I'll just say a future event, and we'll put it. I don't know. In some ways, it's kind of an event you could do with masks. So I don't know. But if considering myself on a team with Rebecca, then we'll sound everything out with each other and then come up with a framework.
Okay. So I move that Christy and Rebecca, Christy, if you're interested, you can take the action to frame put together a proposal framework for a bike event similar to the bike rodeo in 2019 and present at the next meeting. Anybody second?
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Next on the agenda, alternatives for Bikeway. And this would be leading from South Wellfleet to Truro, although part of that route is already in work by DCR. And what, of course, the issue, the hard issue the town faces is what to do subsequent to the work they have planned. And there are, they've presented their plans at the March 10th meeting. There's been some correspondence between the town and DCR and regarding the DCR plan, and between Stantec and the town regarding the DOT plan, which is in a more preliminary stage. Stantec is the design contractor who's working with DOT. So this agenda item is for information purposes. It's not necessarily for discussion or for action on our part, because these are our focus, I believe, in the future will be on identifying and evaluating alternatives because of the current state of what's going on with DCR. Rebecca, I know you have copies of some of the correspondence that's gone back and forth. DCR was responding to a letter of concern that was sent by our select board to them. I wonder if, in the interest of time, if we were to read just the DCR response back to the town, because it does refer to the town letter to them. Would you mind, if that sounds good to you, would you mind reading the DCR letter to the town?
Okay. Let's see.
This is just so we're all on the same page. We all have the same information.
Mm. All right, this is from the DCR. dated September 24th, 2020 to the select board. I just received your letter of August 26, 2020, expressing the town's concern over the extent and current timeline of the DCR Wellfleet extension project for the Cape Cod Rail Trail. Thank you for your input and communication. At this time, DCR has elected to phase our project and only construct the Cape Cod Rail Trail extension from the LeCount Hollow Trailhead to DCR's Wellfleet Hollow Campground. We hope to initiate construction of this project early next calendar year and complete it sometime in 2022. We believe that this phase 1 project will be a benefit to both Wellfleet and Commonwealth residents. While we appreciate your desire to explore alternative shared use pathway routes north of Old County Road, DCR does not own any other right-of-ways and would defer any feasibility studies to the town and other parties. In addition, DCR continues to believe that the safest and best approach for users of the Cape Cod Rail Trail and for the Wellfleet residents of all ages will be to continue the Cape Cod Rail Trail on the former railroad corridor to a new terminus trailhead at Route 6. However, as requested, we have placed those plans on hold for the present. As a part of our current project, we do ask the town work with DCR to provide temporary alternative parking for the LeCount Hollow Trailhead near the Chamber of Commerce on the town-owned Old State Highway. We hope that this addresses the town's concerns, and we look forward to working with you as the phase 1 project moves into construction. Please feel free to reach out to me again or to Craig Cashman, DCR Director of Legislative Affairs, or Paul Janage, DCR Director of Trails and Greenways, with any questions. Sincerely, Jim Montgomery, DCR Commissioner.
Thanks, Rebecca. The other item that of correspondence that's relevant is the Stantec letter to the select board, which was requesting town inputs on DOT's proposal along Route 6 and Main Street. And Rebecca, if you have that letter handy, could you share that with us?
I'm trying to pull stuff up on my phone so I don't mess up the screen here. I don't have a copy of the Stantec letter handy. It's not pulling up. Do you happen to have it? You could do a screen share?
I have it. I'm not sure how I could do a screen share. Let's see. So let's see, Stantec. Are you seeing my screen?
No.
No.
Okay. Let me try pulling it up here again. Sorry for the delay.
If I could just insert something. Rebecca, is there any problem in sending the committee copies of those letters when it's convenient?
Yes, yes. Next time we'll have these all sent out in a packet, nice little packet.
Great.
I have the Stantec letter up on my screen.
The Stantec letter was sent to all the board members when it came out, but for some reason it's not pulling up.
Do you have, how do I do a screen share?
You, and I'm looking mine up too, but so if you see the green share screen on the bottom bar of your Zoom page, and it's a green square with a black arrow.
Okay, let me get back to my Zoom screen. Share screen, yeah.
So you'll click that, and then you should be able to select from the different screens that you have on.
I see, yeah.
Awesome.
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Rebecca, do you mind reading through that? Or anyone actually? So Rebecca, since you were going to read it, why don't you? And that way we'll just have it audibly so that we can. Thank you.
So this is from Stantec, the consulting firm that were they hired by the town of Wellfleet and then they work with the DOT? I believe that's how it works.
Yeah.
The town of Wellfleet, in coordination with the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, is advancing the design of intersection improvements at Route 6 at Main Street. Stantec Consulting Services, Inc. are providing design services in support of this project. The purpose of this project is to implement roadway safety improvements and provide accommodation for all modes of travel. The project extends along Route 6 for approximately half a mile, 2,700 feet, from about 700 feet north of the Main Street intersection west to end of the future Cape Cod Rail Trail extension south of Oriole Lane. The project also consists of the reconstruction of approximately 450 feet of Main Street. Route 6 is currently envisioned to be reconstructed to feature one 11-foot wide travel lane and a 6-foot wide shoulder direction. Proposed Route 6 improvements also include a southbound left turn pocket at the Cahoon Hollow Road intersection and left turn pocket in both directions of the Main Street intersection. Bicycle accommodations will be provided on the roadway shoulders of Route 6. Pedestrians will be accommodated on a 10-foot wide sidewalk on the easterly side of Route 6 and a can you scroll down the letter?
Yes, sorry. I was looking at something else.
And a 5-foot wide sidewalk on the westerly side. Proposed improvements on Main Street include 11-foot wide travel lanes, 5-foot wide shoulders, and a 5.5-foot wide sidewalk on the northerly side of the street. A locus map featuring the proposed trail is shown in Figure 1. We request that you review this map at your earliest convenience and provide any comments that you wish to make regarding this project. We would appreciate your response by August 31st, 2020. Written comments and questions should be submitted electronically to
Their contact information, and that's Joe McLaughlin. And then there's the picture here of what they intend. And you can see it extends on Route 6 and Main Street both. Nope, sorry. Okay. Thanks. Let's see, Christy, is there, I'm going to close my screen sharing.
Agenda backup.
Okay.
And then everyone will have to reset their pictures.
Yeah. All right. Well, I thought it was important to introduce those two letters so that everyone has had a chance to see them. We've read them in our meeting. We're aware of what they say. The related to that is the Cape Cod Commission plan for bikeways on the Outer Cape. And there are, just one second, I'm looking at something. There's the Outer Cape Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan final report that was prepared by the Cape Cod Commission in September of 2016, and it was updated in September of 2017. And there were some excerpts that are worthwhile to read, and we could provide these as, with the meeting minutes, just like the letters can be provided and copied to all the committee members. but I thought it'd be worthwhile to read a couple of the excerpts from the report, just so that we're aware of what they say about the area around Route 6, so that we're aware of what they had to say in their report. And again, this is prior to DCR and DOT presenting their plans. So on page 42 and 43, in a section called Issues Requiring Further Consideration, I'll read an excerpt from there. It says, a more detailed evaluation of possible route designs between the Wellfleet railbed and the Route 6 Main Street area in Wellfleet is needed. Extending the primary route through this area generated a substantial amount of public comment due to concern about safety and the character impacts along Cahoon Hollow Road. Commercial use on Route 6 near Cahoon Hollow Road. Commercial uses on Route 6 near Cahoon Hollow Road have numerous curb cuts and heavy usage, especially during the summer months. The slope of Cahoon Hollow Road and the cemetery at the northeast corner of Route 6 and Cahoon Hollow Road also pose challenges. Alternative routes through this area should be explored, including placing the route within the Route 6 right-of-way, placing the route behind existing commercial uses and the cemetery, placing the route along the Old Kings Highway and Cahoon Hollow Road to Route 6, and placing the route along the previously considered and dismissed utility corridor. All of these options also present challenges, including private property, cultural and natural resource impacts, and topography, which is why they were not selected for the route. However, given public concern about this portion of the primary route, the project team recommends further study to identify the most suitable option. The study area should stretch from the railbed / Route 6 vicinity in the south to the Gross Hill Road / Route 6 vicinity in the north. And then there's also a comment in the recommendation section of this plan. That's page 47 of the document. A couple of sentences here. It says where the railroad, it basically it addresses those concerns that were raised earlier in the report. It says where the railroad bed meets Route 6 is an area of concern due to the large number of commercial curb cuts and heavy traffic volumes. Further study is needed to identify the best route for bicyclists for the approximately half mile between the railroad bed and the Route 6 Main Street intersection. So that's where we are. We've heard from DCR, from DOT, and from the Cape Cod Commission report for 2016. Based on those documents, I mean, it seems that we have, the town has an opportunity to move forward on considering alternative routes. So as we do so, I mean, there are going to be, I think, many factors to consider and many organizations we will need to team with, starting with Cape Cod Commission, including the National Seashore. And of course, we'll want to move forward in cooperation with neighboring towns, Truro in particular, since we're talking about taking a route from where DCR is going in Wellfleet to the Truro line. So thoughts? And really we're transitioning into item 5D here on our agenda, which is considering Wellfleet's ongoing effort to meet with other entities to consider alternatives.
My thought about D is that it derives from what we decide on E and F. And in terms of E and F, I think I would propose those are really part of the same thing. Consider a methodology, including criteria for identifying and evaluating. So I think those two could be combined.
Mm-hmm.
And if we, when we consider a methodology, we're going to consider necessarily all of the stakeholders that are involved in these issues, and that would then address D. So I think D is to be done kind of activity if that will fall out of the methodology.
Yeah. So our,
I further, let me just throw this in. That's, I would love to take a crack at that with somebody, say, and do a draft for our, get it out ahead of time of a next meeting.
that's item, that's really looking at the methodology.
Do combining E and F,
Mhm.
and then one of the output, one of the items that would be addressed in that would be D. I mean, we can talk about D now, but it would certainly identify the stakeholders that those entities that Wellfleet is meeting with.
Yeah, well, I agree with you that D, E, and F are linked. Our consideration of partnering with external agencies, laying out a systematic framework for identifying and evaluating bike routes, and then thirdly, considering which criteria will be used, what selection criteria we will use to evaluate the routes. I agree they're all linked. I would say they're distinct in a sense. And we can discuss the three items. D, I think that there are I know there are efforts underway now. Clearly we need our charge from the town, from the select board, specifically mentions Cape Cod Commission and Truro, National Park Service or the Seashore. We need to be mindful of the fact that there are state agencies who have interest as well. The select board has had a recent meeting. A few of us observed that meeting, and that was a move in the right direction for the town to be engaging or starting to build a team with these outside agencies. We want to be part of that solution that the town comes up with in terms of putting a team together to consider alternatives. So I would say with respect to D, we just want to, as a committee, we need to be proactive in working closely with the select board and with the town administrator to be part of the solution for the town as it moves forward. The select board members are aware of our interest in an active role. And there has been communication with the town administrator recently that was very positive. The new town administrator, Maria Broadbent, and I don't know if Maria is on the line for this meeting, but she was aware of the meeting. We had a good discussion yesterday morning. Rebecca and I had a chance to talk with her just about where the town's going in terms of what it's doing and what our thoughts, on the committee playing a role. And it was a good meeting. Sounds like we can help be part of the town's solution in dealing with these outside agencies in looking at alternatives as a team. So with respect to D, I think that at this point, the leadership of the town's effort lies with the select board, but that we're a resource at their disposal. And it looks like we've got the right connections to work with them actively. Does anybody have any other thoughts on that? And Rebecca, no, because you were in the meeting yesterday. Yes.
Well, since we have Mr. Elkin on the line, I don't know if the rest of the committee knows, I was recently informed he is actually Wellfleet's rep with the Cape Cod Commission. So I guess that's my understanding, Mr. Elkin, is you're sort of our point person, or you'll work with us to have any discussions with the town administrator and Cape Cod Commission. As Peter Cook said, we're we're here to try to support anything that the town wants to do. So I wasn't quite sure if you want to introduce yourself or what information, your role.
I'm the representative on the commission itself. However, your dealings are mostly with the staff of the commission rather than the commission, because there's nothing that's coming before the commission at this time, only working with the staff on the master plan. So my role is just to facilitate any meetings with the staff to make sure they're willing to talk with you. And to summarize, I had a preliminary meeting with Steve Tupper and one other woman who had worked on the master plan. Her name escapes me. And the action left was that they wanted to be sure when talking to individuals that they represented the town, and requested that the town administrator send forward a letter not indicating that this committee is in fact representative of the town. So that's where it stands. And Peter said you talk to Maria and make sure she sends out that letter. And then I expect you'll get a response from the commission staff.
Got it. And so Maria did say that she wanted to organize Walkway committee members to be involved in it. And would that be something that we should copy you on, and that you'll join, or your work is sort of done at this point? You connected us, and then.
Yeah, I think so. If you need anything from me, it's fine, but I'm just trying to make sure that you have an efficient communication with the staff of the commission.
Got it. So as far as D, I think working with the Cape Cod Commission would be a great next step. So maybe under D, one of the actions we can do is try to work with our town administrator to set up a meeting, and one or two of us be present to support any information and be able to relay information to the rest of the committee.
Yeah, I don't know that the staff was asking that the administrator be involved, other than that the administrator indicate that this committee represents the town, rather than that you're not just a random group of individuals. But
I
that
got
you,
I think as so the town administrator's involvement can play a role in helping us get with Cape Cod Commission. And based on what the select board decides, the town administrator may play an active role in working with us on those things, just because the select board has a pretty strong interest in pursuing this. We had a great conversation though with the town administrator, I would say, yesterday. Would you agree, Rebecca?
Yes, and it sounds like, I'm sure she's very busy. So if there's places where she can not have present for meetings and whatnot, but I think she seemed willing to be involved and be present for some meetings with us. And I think it would be good, especially while she's learning the whole situation.
Yeah.
I think that's great that she, wherever she can leave the work to us, because that's our purpose, so she can free up time for other stuff that she has on her plate. That would be great.
One thing I've considered, regarding this item D, or effort to meet with other entities, is the development of a memorandum of agreement, and what role, first of all, whether one's required, and then whether our committee could be proactive in drafting one for the town to consider, sharing with the Seashore, Truro, the town agencies, and of course the Cape Cod Commission, if that's even necessary. But if it is, it might it might prove valuable, because it would define roles, responsibilities, and expectations among the different agencies in dealing with each other to address the bikeway alternatives.
So you mean kind of like a more detailed version of our charge?
Something like that, yeah, but it would be a team agreement between the organizations so that they understand their roles, responsibilities in working together to develop this and also help manage expectations. As an example, the seashore is sensitive to budget issues, whether the seashore is going to incur financial obligations if we pursue alternatives that touch on National Park Service land. And so we would want to, I think that one of that's one of their expectations is to not have to take on a financial responsibility. And perhaps if we put together a team game plan with them, we spell that out and make it clear that that's one of our that's one of the conditions of the team is that we're not they will not be incurring a financial obligation as a result of the outcome, so that we can get them on board. We start forming some initial teaming agreements with them, and the agreement itself becomes a product that people can helps to organize a team effort.
That sounds like a great idea.
It does.
I think at this point, it would be important to coordinate an effort like that with the town government, meaning the town administrator as an initial contact, and of course with the select boards, because they need to be aware of what we're doing. But I would propose that that would be at least a starting point for our involvement with this teaming, is in working with the town administrator to propose a memorandum of agreement that Wellfleet could propose this to these outside agencies, and we could work with her on how best to do that. Does that sound like a reasonable idea?
Yeah.
I think it's, go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just saying, I think that sounds great. I mean, we do have to, the more coordination we have with all these other entities, I think that's so that we can put together a coordinated plan and everybody knows which way we want to move forward. I mean, that makes total sense. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, I'm really new to all of this. We as a committee we're an ad hoc committee, and our role is to provide information to the select board, as I understand it. We ourselves can't or shouldn't make teaming agreements, right? So
that's correct. We're not in a position, we don't have the authority as a committee to enter into a teaming agreement. But we can proactively propose one to our own town government to pursue with outside agencies, and then we may have some authority delegated to us to pursue it.
So I think that's a great idea. I mean, we have to, but I think also the methodology that we come up with for evaluating bike routes would normally have the notion of teaming agreements as, I mean, one can envision that. Part of the methodology is that you have teaming agreements and you work within this. So I think they're part, and they should be done together, because any methodology that we propose certainly has to be, we can't enforce it. The select board has to agree with it in the town. So maybe those two are related, the teaming agreements.
I think it also gives us a goal for talking to each organization, but I'm so curious. Every time I read that report from Cape Cod Commission, I think, well, so how do we get them to do that next research? It says more research is needed, and then we met with them, and at the time that we met with them a year and a half ago, they had no plans to do further research, but they are expert in we can have good ideas and walk the paths and we know the paths, but they are the ones with the ability to research feasibility. So is that one of our goals? That's what I want to hear so badly from them.
I would
Yeah,
say that
that's
part
what
of
I would-
the methodology for evaluating bike rides is to identify the stakeholders, identify their issues, discuss these issues with you to get a sense of the depth of them and what some alternatives would be. That's part of, I see that as part of the methodology. And it's crucial because until everybody buys in, you can't go forward. So that methodology of how you do that, how you approach it, is critical to define. I agree with you, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And to my view, there are two parts to that methodology. One involves item D, which is the teaming, but the other derives from DCR's letter, in which they say they defer to Wellfleet to figure out what to do next. So, which I think means the town of Wellfleet has a great opportunity here to lead the charge on developing this follow-up alternative in a way that's satisfactory to the town. How about we take D, and these are not listed necessarily to be separate actions or anything, but rather to be separate discussion items. But it certainly sounds like D and E are really linked closely. The reason D was listed separately is because we do have other players in the town who are participating, and we want to make sure that that we handle that right, and the town administrator and the select board in particular. Shall we take D and E together to brainstorm?
Really don't see the difference. F is a subpart of E. If you want to evaluate bikeway routes, you need criteria.
Mm-hmm.
So that's F. So I think F is part of E, and certainly accessibility is part of the issues of the criteria. Accessibility by law in Massachusetts and federally is a requirement. So that's a criteria that. So in a sense, I certainly would, in my head, here's a proposal a first item of work could be to consider the elements of D, E, F, G and come out with a set of partitions. These things are going to involve teaming agreements, are going to involve development of an overall methodology and criteria. It may be that there's a different partitioning that needs to come out of those four very extremely important items.
I think, yes, yeah. And so these, again, weren't listed to be separate actions, but rather discussion topics, because they're in the context of, there are some unknowns in each of these areas that we just wanted to discuss as a group, so we're all aware what the issues, we can kind of define what the issues are. And so this is actually really productive to say, okay, well, our methodology, what does it mean to have a methodology for identifying and evaluating bikeway routes? Well, DCR is deferred to the town. So our committee has an obligation to pursue the town's interests. If we develop a methodology for identifying and evaluating bikeway routes, it should include, well, does that method, are we talking about a methodology for our committee and for the town, or are we talking about a methodology for a team? The reason I ask that is because they can be separate. When the state agencies are involved in the Cape Cod Commission, as we've seen in the reports, you can end up with a set of selection criteria that sounds very very technical. You know, it's oriented towards civil engineering concerns and meeting regulations. And there's a place for that, but there's also a place for a set of criteria that is responsive to town concerns, and that we may want to consider how we have a methodology for identifying and evaluating routes, and for selection criteria that have a different, they're a different recipe than what, say, state agencies come up with in terms of, you know, compactness of soil and incline angles and width of rights of way, things like that. There's maybe more technical, but I think we can come up with selection criteria that are responsive to the feedback the town has given the state, and reflect the concerns the town has articulated. But we can also do it in a way in which we prioritize them, so that we can not just have an array, an unfiltered array of things to consider, but we can actually start prioritizing, and it would give us a tool to really select from amongst the alternatives which one best meets the town's concerns. I guess with all that said, we need, regarding item D, I think we need to work closely with the town administrator for now, especially as we begin an initial engagement with the Cape Cod Commission. Regarding item D, I would say that the question is, do we, by item D, excuse me, item E, the methodology, not proposing to substitute something new for what Cape Cod Commission and DCR already have, but rather come up with something internal to the town so that we can make sure we're meeting the town's concerns. And then lastly, the item F, the selection criteria. It's identifying, it's brainstorming about what criteria make the most sense. And my thought there was that this committee won't have all the answers, but that we can represent the town, or be a point to bring all the town's interests together. And that may involve some cooperation with some of the other committees. For instance, it would be, I think, valuable when we're looking at criteria to consider inputs from, say, the planning board or historical commission, to make sure that, or the people who are, you know, trying to think of the name of the committee. Somebody help me out here with environmental concerns in the town. What's that?
It's called the Climate Change Committee now.
Climate change, but I was also thinking about environmental protection, wetlands, things like that.
Conservation.
Thank you, conservation.
Oh, Conservation Commission.
But all of these committees to have their inputs, and so that could be an effort that takes some. We have to invest some energy to really get these committees' ideas, so that what we have is not. What we have is a set of criteria that, again, reflects the town's concerns and interests.
That's a great idea. I mean, it could be just that maybe they can make it an agenda item and send us a letter with their feedback, or representatives could meet, we could all meet. That's a great idea, though, to get from other committee members.
What I propose.
Let me just be a devil's advocate there. That's a slope in which, if you had infinite amount of time, it would be a great thing to do, is to get 12 committees to give you their inputs as to what the criteria would be. I'm not saying you're saying this, but I think we should worry about, we have limited resources and limited time, and we have some objectives to really quickly, 2 months. We really want to have things well in hand. I
Maybe
think
we could ask for an email, and if they don't get back to us, then they don't. But maybe we could get some feedback from somebody by just even by email.
What if,
Yeah, but I'm kind of with Lance on that too, that, it has to be somewhat limited because boy, we'd be going down a rabbit hole quickly, if I would agree, it's a great idea, but wow, that's something we'd be working on a lot,
what if,
I was going to say, I see it as very proactive, but I think we have, once we have some proposals, people will have feedback, and that's very realistic. It'd be nicer to get it in
Right.
advance, and why not send out an email to offer that opportunity? But I just keep thinking, how do we just lay out our ideas? And I feel personally, as someone who's a resident and familiar representing the interests of the town as a member myself, and as a parent, as someone who's concerned about the environment, all of that, but someone without technical data, I just keep thinking about the Cape Cod Commission. I've walked these trails and tried to think about it so much, but I want technical advice at this point. It's like, to get to the next level, how do we take our ideas to the next level so that we really can offer them to the town and gather feedback?
I really agree with Christy. I think there's an approach. Let me just throw it out to say, we're not doing this in a vacuum. We have 3 models to derive from. Generally, we're not the first group to look at developing trails. There's a lot of information out there, and there are a lot of criteria. That's one source of these things. Second of all, we understand the issues that all of the committees, all of the stakeholders we have are concerned about: property values, safety, noise, all of these things. We have a good handle on those, so that's a good source. A third one that might not occur to you is system engineering. I did this for much of my life, and in a system engineering approach, you consider, who are the stakeholders. It's a very rigorous approach, and it's good there. One of the things that's really important is you consider your user population and the diversity of it, and what the goals are that you have to meet for that user population. And the very first criteria on it, if you have normal people, that is, not nuclear engineers who've signed up to get exposed to radiation, but people riding a bike, you have to worry about safety. Safety has to be the number one in every system engineering approach. So I think we have plenty in abundance to draw from. We can get out a model, and we can flesh it, and we can do a fairly good job of anticipating what the hot buttons might be for the other people. And we can get it, then we can give them something to propose, to react against. I think that would be really useful, because there's so many things out there that we could do. Why not give them a specific idea? We need to vet it, and we need to work with people and talk to them privately to make sure that there's a buy-in. But I would argue for something specific.
can I, those are great. Yes, Rebecca.
Just to also answer Christy's question, so yes, that's what my thought was too. It just, everything always seemed to come back to the Cape Cod Commission and a feasibility study, because while we need to do all these other steps, ultimately, we're gonna have to probably work with them, and they can probably provide some insight into the normal procedure with other bike and walkway committee towns that have done the same thing. So we are gonna work. Maria was on board with having a meeting with the Cape Cod Commission. So I think we're going to try to schedule that. It doesn't have to be a whole meeting, because it's sort of a information gathering meeting. And so hopefully we'll we'll get that underway, and then at the next meeting, maybe can report back on what steps they've told us are involved, to work with them to get a feasibility study done by them, hopefully in conjunction with the Bike and Walkway Committee and the town's ideas and feedback.
So that will be essential. I mean, to do an actual technical feasibility study of any alternatives. And no, the comments are well taken. We're talking about something that's more internal to the town in terms of selection criteria, because as the town committee, we have a charge to, I think, represent the town's interests as we look at alternatives, and our interests transcend some of the technical criteria that Cape Cod Commission or DOT or DCR will bring to a feasibility study. So how about we do this? Tell me what you think. If our committee goes ahead and drafts a notional list of what we consider to be success criteria for an alternative to meet. So it'd be an objective list. It would not be, it wouldn't reflect any particular alternative, but it would just say, okay, what does the ideal alternative look like? What attributes does the ideal alternative have? And we can take into account things that would be important to the town in terms of safety, first and foremost, from what I hear. Does it promote cycling as a practical means of transportation? I just wrote myself some notes here. Does it preserve and promote Wellfleet's character, as a rural seaside place? There are a number of things we could consider. How about this? How about we develop a draft list and then we take a look at it. Once we feel we have a list that addresses all that we consider important, we could potentially go out to selected committees in town, committees and boards, and ask their inputs. But that way we're giving them something to look at for review rather than just asking them the open-ended question, what's important to you? But in that way, we would achieve something that Lance mentioned, which is basically to get buy-in, to get stakeholder buy-in within the town government.
I think it's a good, but I myself wouldn't trust that list if I came up with it. I would think I would be missing something. So I'd be much more in favor of having a methodology which specified how we get to criteria. One of the things you do is you go to stakeholders and they say, what's really important here? And we might not have thought about property value, but a lot of people do. And we do know about that one, but there's probably 10 out there we don't know about. And maybe they have a pattern. I just think we ought to think about our methodology first, and we can do like you say, I agree, and say these are some things, but our methodology will elicit, it's robust enough to go out there and find other criterion that in fact are not so apparent. Noise, for example, might not be high, but it might turn out to be a very important, not that it will, but it's that unexpected thing. I don't want to come out with a list and then we risk the chance of we miss some things and then we lose respect. They don't trust us. I would rather have something that says, here's a start. This is what we've said, but here's our methodology, and depend on the methodology.
I'd be, I don't know. I'd be game for making a list and considering it and creating the opportunity for feedback from committees. I think it does. We would be self-protect. We wouldn't be saying, "Hey, we know." We'd say, "Hey, here's what we've come up with. What does it make you think?" Because actually, until Pete listed the examples for success criteria, I didn't quite have a grasp of it, but listing the examples prompted thoughts in my head. So that's how we'd propose it to the other committees, to say, here's what we've come up with. We're looking for your feedback. So it would be sort of not, here's what we say. We're never going as experts. We're going as worker bees. And our job is to get everyone's feedback and put it into a plan together.
The way I was approaching it is, we're representing the town's interests in a multi-agency team that's going to look at bike routes. And as we represent the town's interests, what should our criteria be? And if we have inputs from various boards and committees, then we can legitimately represent the town's interests. I agree with you, Lance. We need to have we need to define our methodology, and that will help. That will help guide developing success criteria or evaluation criteria. So let me propose that we how about this, Lance? How about if you and I work together to present a methodology at the next meeting for committee evaluation for our committee to participate in the selection of bikeway alternatives. Okay, so that would be one action. All in favor of, is there anybody want to second that?
I second that.
Okay, all in favor of that action?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Let me propose a second action, and that is that a team within our committee begin brainstorming, begin drafting a list of criteria that we can consider as a committee before we send it out, but that we can begin drafting that ultimately will reflect the town's interests in evaluating bikeway alternatives. And it would be things like the ones that I just was listing. You know, you want to minimize adverse impact to motor vehicle traffic on the Outer Cape. I mean, Route 6 is an important artery, not just for Wellfleet, but for a lot of towns. So things that we do along Route 6 are going to make a difference for Truro and Provincetown, just as they will for Wellfleet. Other criteria to consider, you know, to what extent do we really want to promote Wellfleet as a cycling venue? You know, what's the importance of having a gradual grade, things like that. So there are lots of different considerations. And so I would propose that we form a team of a couple of people to bring back some ideas on selection criteria that we could review at the next meeting as well. Are there thoughts on?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I'd be happy to get on a team doing that.
Excellent. Ned, that great. I mean, as an avid cyclist, yeah, I think that would be a great. Love to hear your ideas on that. Rebecca, would you work with Ned pulling together so we get a couple of people on it, so we'd have a team that's working on the selection criteria?
Yes.
And then we'll have, great. Okay, so those two actions, because they are linked, let me just present them together. So I move that we have that. I guess we've already talked about the methodology action. So I move that Rebecca and Ned come back to us at the next meeting with a preliminary set of selection criteria. Second?
Second motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. And that doesn't lock us into a course of action, but it just gives us some information that we can consider at the next meeting on all these counts. Well, moving on to, yes, Rebecca.
So Ned and I will draft a list, and then that'll be an agenda item at the next meeting that then the whole committee will look at, and then maybe add or remove, or we'll work on it more at the next meeting. Is that the idea?
That's the way I'd approach it. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And same with the methodology, you know, Lance and I will put some ideas together and bring it to the committee for consideration, you know, for discussion, for additional work. These meetings are working meetings as much as anything, in my view. The last item here, G, considering accessibility requirements. Obviously, that'll be one of the selection criteria. It was listed separately here because it's a complex issue, potentially. There are some unknowns about what accessibility requirements are. They've been, as we've determined after the fact, they've been misstated in some of the state meetings. And so we want to understand what they really are. We want to get the ground truth on what the accessibility requirements are. How do they apply to different agencies? Is it true that the funding source is what really determines which set of accessibility requirements are followed? There are some unanswered questions there, and it would be, I think, worthwhile for us to pursue that specifically to try to get, again, to ground truth. I would ask Rebecca if you would be willing to take that on, and if one of us can help you.
Yeah, maybe somebody can help me, because I think what you're getting at is trying to stick to the legal guidelines for the state. So I'd feel better if there was somebody else also, because it may not be all in one neat, nice place. It may.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be willing to help you on that.
Okay, that'd be great, because I think I did sort of before look, and it was a little not as cut and dry as I thought it would be when I first started the search process.
Christy, were you going to volunteer on that too?
I wasn't, but I can.
Okay.
Have no current body of knowledge about it, and I do feel like Rebecca and Pete do, but I'm always happy to do research. I love to research, so feel free to ask.
Let me just throw out there that one of that accessibility requirements derive or are calibrated against the population. So there's one population we really need to think about, which is that of the infirm, invalid, people with disease and stuff, who want to use the parkway and therefore may need e-bikes or e-trikes to do that. And there are a variety of legislation activities in Massachusetts, but around that in particular. So ground truth is hard, but we should derive the accessibility, like children have accessibility, people who are blind have accessibility. So it's around, often they're organized around the particular infirmity or difficulty that or challenges that the user population has.
Well, and as you go around the Outer Cape, you see that there are different opportunities for different populations. Like, for instance, if you're biking in Provincetown, it's incredibly steep. It's definitely something that we waited until the kids were a certain age, and it's or there's some of the beaches in Truro that have accessibility with a special wheelchair, and they provide the opportunity to borrow that wheelchair from the town. So there's all of these different opportunities for different accessibility options. It's just like there's a small part of the pathway at the National Seashore Visitor Center for blind people, and it's designed for that. So there's opportunities, and that's where I would like to know, what are the town's priorities because it's a big job to consider everything. We can't accomplish everything in our bike path, just like we figured out the Route 6 bike path does not accomplish enough. That's not accessible to enough of our residents that we feel in support of it. But could we provide something that is accessible to enough of the priorities of our residents? So it is almost related to the earlier two things. It's too big almost to decide on right now until we decide who we're going to serve.
One thing we could do is to make the long list and then say, we think the following, half of them are really important for the town. And that's very specific. And then the town can react to that. And if we've missed one, they can tell us, but I think to ask them and I think it'd be better for them if we said, here's a big list. We think these are the top ones. Tell us what you think.
So that's true for the success criteria. You talk about the accessibility requirements in particular. Yeah. I think accessibility requirements to me is more of a regulatory compliance gray area, because it's related to funding and who actually builds trails. And it would be great if the town is pre-armed with correct information, with accurate information, because it is a murky topic. Whether or not DOT has to abide by one set of standards and say another agency has a different set of standards. It's just important that we understand that regulatory landscape. I know, Christy, just based on your comments, if that's something that you'd like to work on, I'll bow out. And if you want to team with Rebecca on that, that's certainly fine with me.
I'm not necessarily saying that, so I don't have any ground knowledge about it. Do you have some knowledge already about this?
Well, I've been exposed to it through some of the meetings with the state agencies, but yeah, I mean, a little bit of understanding of, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it'd be great, you and Rebecca, if you guys are both game for it.
Okay, well, then I move that, yeah, Rebecca and I will work on coming back to the committee at the next meeting and presenting information on accessibility requirements. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Hi.
All right. Well, I think we're getting a good action plan together for the next meeting. And if we can hold that on the 18th, then we're take a break for the holidays and we'll be in good shape. The last item here is other bikeway and walkway issues in Wellfleet. Rebecca, you had mentioned to me earlier there was an old issue regarding marking of walkways. Was it walkways on Main Street?
Yes, a resident sent us some pictures and a suggestion, which was on an agenda item and voted on. And it was just near two places in town that are sidewalks, but there's no painted white marking or any way. And he was pointing out that having a marking will help both motorists and pedestrians and cyclists to understand which is the sidewalk and which is the road. And we sent those pictures and information to the town administrator at the time, the former town administrator, who then forwarded it on to the police chief and the DPW. And then they were going to look into it. And then I think, COVID happened, the holidays happened, then COVID happened, and it sort of dropped off the map. So it'd be good to follow up on that. And I think I have the emails thread from that, so I could probably pull that up and just get an update from them on it. So that could be something I could do.
Okay, so the follow-up would be to contact those parties and get an update.
Mhm.
And great. And then could you report that back at the next meeting?
Yes.
And we could determine if we need to take any action or make any effort. All right, well, I propose that Rebecca take that on and then yes, Lance.
I just was gonna throw in, but Christie, you were ahead of, but go ahead and finish your motion.
I was just moving that essentially Rebecca reopen that issue, contact people involved, and come back to the committee with a report and a recommendation on how we proceed.
Second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The one other issue is, and thank you, Rebecca, for forwarding this. There was an article online regarding, well, the title of the article is, it's from Harwich. Route 28 sidewalk wins broad support in Harwich. And then the article goes on for a couple of pages to describe a walkway issue in Harwich that posed some public safety concerns and was apparently successfully resolved by the town working with DOT. But as you can imagine, it didn't all happen immediately, but a lot of people had to work on it to make it work. My thought is that this might be a good example for us to learn more about. And Harwich isn't that far away to even go down to take a look at what they're doing. There are points of contact listed in the article, including a member of the select board. There are a couple of engineers listed here. At any rate, I would be happy. I'm interested in going down and looking at it myself. I think it could be informative to see what Harwich is doing. Learn from their successes and and failures. So I would move that, I mean, if there's, first of all, any discussion, but I'd like to go down and I'd like to contact them and then perhaps go down and look at this project and meet with them.
I second that.
Okay, so folks think that's a good idea, then yeah, motion to go ahead and take that action. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
That's a really cool idea. I love it.
Yeah, I think we'll see what they've been up to in Harwich. Are there any other bike and walkway issues that folks would want to bring up? Lance?
I just want to put it on the record that there is no public way to get from South Wellfleet to to Wellfleet Center. And in some imaginable future, the bike trail will not be the primary preoccupation of this committee. And us residents here and on the south side of town would love to be able to bike and walk up to the north. So just put it on the list.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask just for clarification's sake. So what DCR is planning now to go from LeCount Hollow, as far as the campground, if Wellfleet is able to add on to that with an acceptable alternative that leads to town or toward town, would that meet? That's different from what you're talking about. What is it that you're talking about?
Side of Route 6 to go from the base along the Bayside.
So on the Bayside is Southwest Wellfleet, what they call South Wellfleet, 02663 area.
Mhm.
If you take Cannon Hill Road, that access probably 40 residences there. That's on that side, the Bayside of Route 6. There is no way to get from any of those residences to Wellfleet Center, except by going on Route 6.
Mhm.
So a public, how is that going to happen? But it is an issue that Wellfleet shouldn't, all of the bikeways and the pathways are in Wellfleet, not in South Wellfleet. So there is a part of our community that we're not serving.
I think South Wellfleet is also on the ocean side of Route 6, though, because like,
Okay, I'm talking about the side from Cannon that begins at Cannon Hill Road.
Southwest.
Road, I'm just trying to remember, is Blackfish Creek interfere with, that's what I'm picturing this, that there's this sort of environment.
As you're going towards P-Town, it's the marshland to your left. As where there's a sign for the great blue heron. From there on up on the left side is, for a while, is that part I'm talking about that has no access to Wellfleet Center, no public access, except on Route 6, which is extremely problematical, certainly for bikes or walkers.
Interesting. Okay. Any other thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, I think, one of the really dangerous parts is right there at LeCounte Hollow, which is close to where you're talking about.
Right.
Have some kind of a crosswalk there, because in the summer that is just nutty crazy there at LeCounte Hollow and Route 6, and that would kind of tie in with you. Like if you were coming, you could take a right on Route 6 for only a few hundred yards, and then if there was accessibility, which would then get you to the proposed DCR bikeway.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Good point.
But I think that LeCounte Hollow intersection there, there should be some way. You see people in the summertime, they're trying to, either walkers or pedestrians or bicyclists trying to get across there, and you're just waiting for somebody to get crushed, because it's really scary there, I think. So, but that's, well, it's something we could address, but.
Are there any committee actions for the next meeting related to this that we ought to consider? Or is this a topic that we want to put in our back pocket for now?
If it's in the minutes, that's the main thing. The reason I raised it, so we can refer to it.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. That's we definitely want to represent all of Wellfleet, and we need to be thinking of all the ways we can do that.
And Ned's point about LeCounte Hollow Road is that on the other side, you're impeding all of these walkers and bikers who need to get across to continue their route. So it's serving even a much broader part of the community.
Thank you. So 2 items before we adjourn. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to Dick Elkin for persevering with us here for 2 hours for our 1.5 hour meeting that we managed to pack into 2 hours. But there's a lot of getting organized, and we're sharing information and forming our own team here. So thanks for sticking with us, and we're looking forward to working with the Cape Cod Commission, and thanks for your help. The other is, and not to, Christy, I don't want to put you on the spot. Could you read back what our actions are?
Sure.
Because we went through several, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here at the end of the meeting.
Yes. So, okay, let me go start from the beginning. I wish I'd highlighted them, but I have that all down. So, okay, we have our elections already. We've made motions about all our elections. Okay. Then motion, seconds the motion. Okay, so Pete moves that members develop ideas for near-term objectives and report them to chair and vice chair. And I'd be happy also to just respond if you want me to. I could put it into an email for everyone. That would be easy.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Do you want me to do the email, or do you want me to just review them right now? Or I can do both.
Oh, well, if you just review them, right, if you put them in an email, great. If you could just review them,
Okay,
just so before we close here, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
sure. Okay, so we've got that. We've got our schedule set. So, and then, okay, let's see here. Do we need to do anything to set the guidelines on our public comment? We made the motion, so that's just established. Is that a to-do?
I would just, perhaps I'd restate it at the beginning of the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
go ahead.
That's okay. And then the next one is that Christy and Rebecca will frame a future plan for an upcoming bike rodeo. Okay. And then. Okay.
And that would include making initial contact with
You got
other
it. And I'll
players. Okay.
put the details in the email, but for sure.
Yeah.
And I have a relationship with all those people, so it's very straightforward. It's great. Okay, so okay, so the next motion. So we had a long discussion about the ongoing effort. So I'm just skimming through that. Sorry. So we have the of scheduling a meeting with the Cape Cod Commission in collaboration with the town administrator, whether she can choose to come or give her approval that we're there as her representatives. Rebecca and Ned will create selection criteria for route alternatives, bike route alternatives, and Lance and Pete will consider methodology standards.
Right. It's the
And
okay.
Rebecca and Pete will consider accessibility requirements.
Okay.
Rebecca will be following up on the resident suggestion for the walkways. Pete will be following up with the contacts listed in the article about the town of Harwich's work with DCR. And that's all.
Okay.
That's plenty, but that's all of them.
One I didn't remember, and I'll ask, did we take any, are we going to take any action? I mentioned the idea of drafting thoughts for a memorandum of agreement. Is that something that, was that taken as an action, or was that just a discussion?
I have it listed as a discussion, including the example of the National Seashore not having financial responsibility. But that's the action that came out of that is setting the meeting with Cape Cod Commission is what sort of how it concludes here.
Oh, okay.
Coordinate an effort with the administrator as a contact. So,
yeah, I would say that that coordinate. Yeah, okay. So we're going to. So no person took an action from that, but we agreed that we want to work with the town administrator and working with the Cape Cod Commission. Meeting with the Cape Cod Commission.
The
Okay.
next step is getting in touch with Cape Cod Commission.
Okay. All right. The any other thoughts? Any other actions that anybody thinks we should be taking before the next meeting?
Didn't we take an action of defining how we would control public comment?
Yeah, we did, we had an agreement. I don't know if that counts as an action.
Okay.
That we're gonna have limit to 1 minute for now. And
Something.
I'll state that like at the beginning of the next, or Christie, either one of us could state that at the beginning of the next meeting.
Sure.
Let's see, there were a few other motions, but I don't know that they amounted to actions. There were more or less committee agreements as part of us getting organized.
Mhm. And I can put all of the motions in bold, just so that they stand out.
Okay.
But I'll add that in, that I'll make an announcement at the beginning of the next meeting.
Okay. Christie, thanks for going through all those actions. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but that was really helpful to me to know what, just to kind of recap all that we talked about here. Hey, any other thoughts? Okay, I move that we adjourn the
This
meeting.
was great, thank you.
So I have moved that we adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will see you again at our next meeting then, which will be right now, I believe will be the 18th.
Just say 9 a.m. for consistency, or?
Well, I have a pretty flexible schedule. Others perhaps have less flexibility. What time works best for people?
9 a.m. is good for me.
Me too.
Christine, Ned, how about you? Oh, you're actually
That
on
works
mute.
for me.
There we
Good
go.
for me. Yeah, good for me.
9 a.m. it is then. We'll
Yeah.
plan on 9 a.m. on the 18th then.
Good to see everybody.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
everybody.